SpaceX Starlink's global blackout. What's their official response? Good question. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much once again joining me for tea time. Currently we have a little bit of fireside, so good. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, maybe a cup of coffee, hanging out, talking tech, talking space, SpaceX, Starlink, Linux, all kinds of great stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about the global blackout that happened yesterday. A really close friend of the show gave me a ring and said, listen, Joe, we're down. We're down globally, not even just in the US. So I'm like, well, I'm going to get on it. I want to find out what's going on and talk to people and see. So I went live right away. And luckily, I don't have just SpaceX Starlink anymore. I have multiple. I have 3 carriers. And I created this Raspberry Pi where all 3 of the ISPs go into here, and it's a fallback type of system. So if one goes down, the next one picks up. So I was able to go live with you guys, even though SpaceX was down and I had no service at all. So it was a global outage. I don't know of anyone that was up. Down detector at the time said that there was like 64,000 people without coverage. You have to take that number and multiply it by 10, 20, 30 or something, because a lot of people don't even know what down detector is. Other people that do, they just won't even say that they're down, right? Because number 1, they don't have access to be able to say that they're down, or number 2, they just don't bother. So even though it says 64,000, you know that there is probably more like 600 to a million. I personally think it's going to be more. I think it was a total blackout. If not, it would be, let's say, close to total blackout. I got some numbers for you guys that I wrote down, and the official response from SpaceX, what they ended up coming back with after a couple of hours of being down. It was a very lengthy outage. I covered a similar type of situation, I think it was a year or 2 back, where the system administrators or someone internal to SpaceX forgot to pay the bill for their cert, for their secure certificate, which allows them to communicate securely between each other. And once that certificate died, well, access died. This time when I was live, I was speculating on what the reason was. And I said, I seriously doubt they were going to make the exact same mistake twice. I don't think it has anything to do with the certificate. Most likely something to do with a ground station or the POPs, where there's some type of software update that occurred that ended up bricking the system, that ended up tanking everything. And they had to either fall back to an old update, or they had to fix whatever they broke at the time. And whenever you do that, it takes time to get the network back up, because there is such thing as TTL, which is time to live, and certain things have a certain time before they reacquire new information. That could be a name server or whatever. I'm not going to get into too many details, but it always takes time for things to come back, even if you're just rolling back an update that broke. So that was my speculation, and they ended up coming back with a response that I'm going to give you here in this video. I kind of want to put a bow on this a little bit and let people know exactly what we know as of right now. And if there's more information that comes out, I will share that tonight on the JC Live show that I'm going to be doing, as always, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So to start out with, yesterday, there was an outage that started right around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that outage went for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours, complete outage. When I say complete, I mean, there was a lot of people out. And the reason why I know that is because I was online live and we had over 1,000 people here, and everyone was from, it could be South Africa to Asia to Germany, everywhere. Everyone was saying that they are out. So we knew that it was a global outage. This wasn't just a US based problem. So it most likely had to do with all of the network. Now, if you don't know, when I say all of the network isn't just one computer. The way the network works with SpaceX Starlink is very similar to your network in your home, where you have APs or access points. So you have your main router, and then you have your APs or your access points that form a mesh network. Think of SpaceX Starlink the same way. Those satellites, those 8,000 satellites that are on orbit, they all interconnect with one another, and they speak to one another through lasers. right? So those laser communication happens between satellites, but then the data is relayed down to ground stations and POPs and to your dish is basically how it works. Think of it this way. If you do a request for Google, let's say you're looking something up, that request goes from your router to your dish. From your dish up to a satellite, from that satellite down to a ground station. That ground station then pipes that off via fiber optic, terrestrially, obviously on the ground, to a POP or a point of presence. The point of presence is actually where the backbone is. It's where let's say, Atlanta, Georgia, for example. There's a lot of locations that are backbones where the internet all siphons into. Think of it as Central Square or the meeting part of a town. It's where everyone goes, right? That is your backbone. And that's where the POPs live, or the point of presence. That point of presence sends that request to Google. Google responds, the point of presence sends that off to the ground station up to the satellite back down to your dish, and then into your router. That is how it goes. So there was a problem with communication with this mesh network. Now remember, that mesh network is the mesh of all those satellites interconnected. But remember, the only satellites that are forming that mesh network is the version 2s as well, version 2 minis, as well as the 1.5s. The 1.0s do not have lasers on board, so they do not form the mesh network. Now, do they still work? Yes, they do, but they do not communicate to each other. But they do communicate with the ground stations, and the ground stations up to them. So we get an understanding of how this works. So after about 2.5 hours of blackout, a VP over there at SpaceX Starlink came out with a statement. The VP's name is Michael Nichols, and very smart guy. He comes out a lot of times with what is going on, and he's definitely someone to follow, because if something's going on, he knows about it and he'll put out statements. And then what will happen is Elon Musk or SpaceX Starlink X page will end up reposting what he states. So this is what he said. He said Starlink has now mostly recovered from the network outage, which lasted approximately 2.5 hours. The outage was due to failure of key internal software services that operate the core network. Key internal software services that operate the core network. Very important information there. We apologize for the temporary disruption in our service. We are deeply committed to providing a highly reliable network and will fully root cause this issue and ensure it does not occur again. So this is what he came out with so that we knew exactly what's going on. And obviously, this means that it does have to do with some type of software that was updated and it bricked the system. Somehow it was some faulty code that they had to either fall back to a previous version of the code or do an immediate update on it and then once again push it back out. Whenever you push out an update, you then have to have all of the network reboot and come back online with that new software, and that takes time. That's just simply how it is. The problem that I have with this is that as a past system administrator for 30 plus years, we would never roll an update out during prime time. It just doesn't happen. All updates are rolled out usually between midnight and 3 a.m. This gives time for the update to propagate throughout the network, and if there's any kind of problems, for us to fix them before people come online by about 4 a.m., 5 a.m. for the most part for the next work day. And normally we'll do them on the weekends or whenever the system has the lightest load possible. Doing this midday just doesn't make any sense. 3 o'clock, I think it was, 3:30 when everything went down. I just don't understand why that went out. And I was speculating at the time, maybe there was an AM/PM thing that was going on. Maybe it was flip-flop. Maybe it was supposed to roll out at 3 a.m. and it went out at 3 p.m. But either which way, I just don't understand why you would roll out any type of software update, no matter how minor you think it is, during prime time. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, who did that? Maybe it was just a simple ones and zeros flip. Very, very easy. It's happened many times to me. And it's kind of scary because you don't know if something's going to go bad. And if it goes bad, it gets bad really quickly. Hence what you saw yesterday where everything went down. So when I was looking up this data, like I said, there was about 64,000 that were without. Most likely that comes to 1 million, 2 million or so people. What I found was it was US, Europe, Canada, Africa, Australia, Asia. It's basically everyone was down, or let's just say a major portion of people were down. And the drop, according to the Global Network Performance, because there's a constant performance using net blocks that people use for monitoring, 16% of normal levels were seen. 16%. That is a big deal, guys. That's only 16% of the mass network that was actually working at the time, according to net blocks. Once again, another monitoring system, basically. Some of the things that we use as system administrators to see when things go down and how many people are out and how long it lasts and this type of thing. So, like I speculated last night, I felt that it had something to do with either a software update at the ground station or at the POPs, and most likely at this point, I think it was a ground station software update that failed, where there was no communication for the mesh network. Any of that communication that came down from satellite to ground station was failing, wasn't working right. I don't think it has anything to do with our routers, and the reason being was people were going online as we were monitoring the revision of firmware. Normally what we would see is if it was a router software problem that was pushed out, you would see them automatically then download the new update and then reboot. So I was having people go into their software and take a look for any type of reboot times and what software they were currently running. And everyone had all different numbers for software, so we knew that there wasn't an update done to the routers. And once again, that's why we were speculating at the time that it had to do with software either in ground station or POP, point of presence. And like I said, I believe that it's something to do with the ground station and satellite communication. So this all being said, all right, blackout. Millions most likely without service. Now, the question that a lot of you had at the time was, well, if SpaceX Starlink goes down like this, how does this affect not only us that are trying to watch a Netflix movie, but how about Ukraine? Or how about our military? Well, that's an interesting question. And I did some research on it, and sure enough, Ukrainian troops were without Starlink for 150 minutes. How long is that? 2.5 hours, right, guys? So it was nothing different, all right, with Ukrainian military in comparison to us, because they are using SpaceX Starlink just like we are. Now, the difference between our military and them is that our military are using Starshield. Starshield is on a different network. Even though they are SpaceX Starlinks hardened with military grade encryption and everything else, they're on a different network. They're not down. All right. I can assure you. Do I know that absolutely 100%? No, but I'm going to tell you, I would say 99% they weren't down. And the reason being is they would not have an update at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time of any sort. I assure you of that. So, in summary, I put together a little table so you can see how this all went down. It ended up happening yesterday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was down. The network was down for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. It came back up right around 6:30 is when everyone started seeing service again. The cause was an internal software service failure in core network. Suspected trigger: faulty configuration in software update, mesh network failure. Once again, mesh network, not necessarily the satellite mesh network, that those satellites are communicating with one another like you have, for example, like I said, you have those APs that talk to each other, those access points in your home. The problem, I believe, once again, I'm speculating, is the communication between the mesh network and that hub, and the ground station. I could be wrong, but that is my thought here. Recovery method was a gradual restoration via ground station resync. Ground station resync. I put that in there, and the reason being is I think that it had to do with the ground stations having to download the latest and greatest fix or roll back and then reboot. Once they reboot, then get that sync going again. And sometimes sync takes a while. I explained this live on how TTL works. TTL stands for time to live, and every service has a different TTL and they're set up differently. Time to live basically says, let's say a time to live for maybe a name server. Right? So if you have a name server with a time to live of, let's say, 2 hours, that means that if a name changes in that white pages of names, let's say, if you don't know how that works, basically think of a name server as like a white pages. You look up Google, and then when you see it gives you an address and a phone number for Google. Well, what ends up happening is the internet actually does not work on the word google.com. It works on the IP, that long address. So if you don't have a white pages to figure out what google.com is, well, you can't get there. That's how it works. So if the white pages are outdated or if there's some type of corruption, you have to download the new version or the latest version of the white pages to find out where the heck Google is. That's what I'm thinking the issue was. There was that communication problem where it couldn't get where it needs to get, or there was some type of faulty communication software that needed to be rectified. And the TTL and how long that lasts before it propagates or downloads the latest and greatest varies between services to services. Now, they can force it to do the update, and that's probably what they ended up doing, but that's a lot of ground stations they had to go and force feed. How that works, I really don't know. Once again, I'm not part of SpaceX. I'm just speculating as a past system administrator. So the impact is millions of people. I put down here tens of thousands offline worldwide. I do that just because we saw that it came up as like 64,000 off. But as we know, with a 16% utilization for the network, you know that 84% of people were gone. They were off. So you could do the math on that. There was millions of people that did not have service as of yesterday. And I put also on here, special case would be the Ukraine military lost battlefield connectivity for 150 minutes. The reason I put that there is something that you need to think about. All right. These are the things that I talk about on this channel all the time. You need to have redundancy. One is none, two is one. What does that mean? You need to have two of everything, or at least three. For me, I have 3 ISPs coming into my homemade router with fallback software. All right. So if one goes down, the next one picks up. If that one goes down, the next one picks up. And then when one comes back, it flips back over. So you have your failover and your fallback. That's how I created this. I did a video on this, matter of fact, when I built this. Check it out. I put together 520 videos for you guys. I'll put a link over here. Go check them out when you're done watching this video. So anyways, the bottom line here is you have military that goes down. You have a lot of people that go down when SpaceX goes down. In this case, where they went down, obviously they have internal redundancy, but when you go and put a patch out there that fails and then propagates throughout the mesh network, you end up taking the entire network down. That's just how it is. And then you have to clean up your mess. That's what they did. It was clean up on aisle 7 for 2.5 hours. Bottom line, in short, I absolutely love how SpaceX is very transparent about what's going on. In the last one, where they were down for an hour or two or however long, a couple of years ago, a year and a half or whatever it is now, when they didn't pay the SSL certificate, their secure certificate, well, they said it. They're like, hey, mea culpa. All right. We didn't pay for our certificate. So you guys are all down. I'm sorry. All right. It'll never happen again. And it didn't happen again. Some people were speculating here. It's like, oh, maybe they didn't pay their SSL a bit. Nah, that's not it. That's not going to be the case twice. All right. That's why I knew that was not going to happen. But they were very transparent and they said exactly what's going on. They had the VP of engineering came on and said exactly what was up about 2.5 hours after the problem occurred so that we knew what the cause was, or at least close to it. I have a feeling that they'll probably make a formal official statement within a day or so. Once they know exactly what happened and they rectify everything to 100%, they'll probably put something out there. But either way, they were very transparent. 2.5 hours into it, he came out and said, listen, this is the issue. It's all coming back online. Hang tight. We are very sorry. This will never happen again. So anyways, guys, that's what happened with the SpaceX Starlink blackout as of yesterday. We covered the other big one with the SSL certificates. This one is pretty big also. It's probably longer than the last one. 2.5 hours is a really long time, but as a system administrator and know how these things work, we know that it takes a while, once again, for everything to download the latest and greatest software or roll back to a previous version and then reboot and then resync everything back up. It does not happen in order of a couple of minutes. Sometimes it takes 15, 20, sometimes it takes an hour or 2 hours, depends on the TTL or the time to live on a lot of these services. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this video. If you enjoyed it, throw the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not. If you are, thank you. I appreciate that. Click the notification button here so when I go live when a new video comes out, you'll be notified of it immediately. And if you want more SpaceX Starlink content, like I told you before, that link is there. I put together a playlist with helpful how-tos, tips, tricks, what to do, what not to do, what to buy, what not to buy, and of course the why behind all of it, because this channel has always been about the why, not just the how, but the why. So check that out. If you want to give back to the channel, there's a thanks button there. Click on that, give $1 or $2 if you like. If not, it's perfectly fine. Consider becoming a member of the channel. That would be even better. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com. Once again, JCristina.com, you can go to shop and take a look at my merch, see if there's something there you like. If it is, pick something up. Help support me and my family. That would be awesome. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, hopefully through SpaceX Starlink, and we'll see you in the next one. Love you guys.